Welcome to Camp Code, the podcast that explores what it takes to create great staff training and great summer camp leaders. Today, we're digging into a topic that's shaping camp staffing more than almost anything else: anxiety in young adults. Why it's happening, what it looks like, and how our training can either calm the storm or make it worse. And stay tuned for a special guest. Running camp should be about people, not paperwork. UltraCamp helps you manage staff, registration, and communication in one place, so you spend less time on tasks and more on camp. Find out more at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. Welcome to Camp Code, a podcast brought to you by Go Camp Pro. We have been podcasting for over 11 seasons and knew we needed to continue. Why? Because just like people grow and change, so does our industry. So here we are, ready to discuss new challenges, new ways of handling situations, new advice from those doing the work, and new ideas to help us all do our jobs better. Our commitment to intentional leadership training just grows stronger every year. And we're welcoming you back to another episode of Camp Code, but we are beyond excited for this episode because we get to chat with one of our very favorite people and a voice that you may recognize, Ruby Compton. We are so thrilled to have you back, as we've been telling you for the past 40 minutes before we started to record. It's been great to have a chance to catch up. But as always, before we get to discussions, we're going to begin with introductions. So, Gabrielle, would you start us off, please?
Yes. Hey, everybody. My name is Gabs. My pronouns are she, her, elle, and I work at the wonderful Camp Waro, which is a camp that serves all girls and non-binary/gender minorities. And we work on creating a positive environment in French and English.
Thank you. And Ruby, haven't said that for so long, but I'm happy to say it today.
Hey, I'm Ruby Compton. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Chief Exploration Officer of Ruby Outdoors, which is a training and support company for camps and outdoor programs. I'm based in Western North Carolina in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I focus on helping outdoor professionals check things off the to-do list.
Nice. And I'm Beth Allison. I'm co-owner of Camp Packer and Go Camp Pro. My pronouns are also she, her, and I'm a camp consultant and a trainer, and I love talking about staff training. So it is fun to have the old gang back together again. So we're just going to dive right in. And before any of you starts thinking, my staff are not anxious, trust us, you're seeing the symptoms whether you realize it or not. So
Got
we're
used
going
to it.
that's right. So we're going to talk about that right now. How can you recognize it? But we're going to get into that in a second. We're going to begin with just a few rapid fire questions, super quick answers, one each. Okay, so let's start with what we always start with. Why? Why has anxiety risen in 17 to 25-year-old staff members? Ruby, what do you think? Give us one answer and then we'll jump to Gab.
Have you seen the world lately? That's my answer.
That's your answer.
The general anxiety that a lot of us feel, especially those of us in the state, about what direction we are headed and choices that are being made and questioning leadership in many directions. It is just a tricky time. So I think when globally things feel really out of control, that's going to trickle down into your day-to-day.
Thank you. Gab, one quick answer.
Hope. That's gone down. It feels like the frogs in the warming up to boiling point pot.
Okay. I would say one huge factor is rising perfectionism. So a lot of young staff feel like they only get rewarded when they do things perfectly. They're terrified of messing up, which means that they hesitate to try new things. Ruby, got another one?
Everything's caught on camera. I know this is something we've talked about in the past, and Gabs has certainly been the one who used to express this in a very clear way. But the idea of, you can make a mistake, and like Beth was saying, that, perfectionism is kind of expected, because if you make a mistake, you might become the next viral video or the talk of the town or the notes on threads or whatever. But the consequence of messing up feels much greater than it did previously.
Absolutely. Gab, got another one?
Yeah, trust is down. Trust in supervisors and support people that they're going to be heard is down because they don't feel heard in the world right now. So trust is low.
I would say another piece is phones. So more than just what Ruby was saying, but if you have grown up with a device that gives you instant feedback and constant stimulation, you just have not had to build the muscle of sitting with uncertainty. And camp asks for presence, improvisation, and problem solving. And I think that those skills are underdeveloped. Any more? Gab, you got one or no?
No, we're good.
Okay, I'm just going to give you one more that I was thinking about is many staff have essentially missed 2 years of teenage practice reps during the pandemic. So those years really mattered for developing social confidence and independence and managing conflict and even reading body language. So I think that that's a pretty good start to a list. All right, so we know a few reasons why. What does anxiety look like in camp staff? So for those who may not be recognizing this as anxiety, because here's a tricky part, most staff don't walk up to you and say, hey, I'm anxious. Instead, you might see these kinds of behaviors. So we'll do another quick rapid round. So Ruby, what kind of behaviors might they be looking for that actually say that staff member is anxious, even though they're not telling us that?
Asking for repeated role plays. So can we try this?
Okay.
Can we run this again? Can we
Mm.
practice this conversation? I'm hearing that from camp directors that this past summer there was a lot of that in training. And that's great, right? They're advocating for what they need. But sometimes I think we're practicing to death and not actually, like, again, going back to what Beth said, feel like we have to have it perfect before we can do it. You do not. At
Right.
camp, that's the best place to make a mistake and go, well, I'll do better with this the next time I have to do it.
Absolutely. Gab?
I would say that it's very hard for I'll speak for myself or some of my staff to receive positive feedback. They don't totally trust when I'm saying, hey, this really, specific is terrific, as Michael Brandwine says. I really believe in that. So I really do give specific examples, but it feels like it's really difficult for our staff to trust that that's what we mean. And so what used to be a positive feedback that would keep them going for a really long time and keep them motivated, I find it's more difficult for them to absorb it.
Okay. I think anxiety shows up like freezing when a simple decision needs to be made, or asking the same question like 3 or 4 times, not because they didn't understand it or not because they weren't listening, but because they need reassurance. So I've seen that quite a bit. Ruby, have you seen any other behaviors?
I can tell you as recently as I was training to become a swim instructor, and some of my anxiousness came out when my trainer was like, okay, you try this thing. And I was like, actually, can you do it? Can I see a moment? And there were certainly times that I did really I had questions and I wanted to see the trainer do it again. But there were other times I was like, I just don't think I'm ready. Right. And I often was ready, but in my brain, I wasn't. And so
Mm,
that question of like, well, is there someone else who can do it? Or can you do it? Or can you show me again? Again, we want to reward that. We want to reward people telling us and being honest about that sort of stuff. But I think there's also an interesting interplay of where we nudge to say, no, actually, you're going to give it a try this time.
absolutely. Gab, got another one?
Yeah, I would say aggression. So just, frustrated about maybe the circumstance, but there's not much that can be done. So if it's raining a lot or they have a camper that is, missing home a little bit more than the rest of them, it seems like the outward frustration, aggression towards authority figures are really present, or even towards their teammates. It's almost there's very little elasticity for even teammates that are struggling themselves, that are clearly trying, but their willingness to forgive and to, as much as there's a culturally seems to be really actually understanding culture in our younger generation, there's also when it comes to performance, if people aren't able to do things right away, there's a frustration is really, really present. That could be for supervisors or teammates.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that sort of
Mhm.
irritability or snappiness.
Yeah.
And I think that we forget or don't realize that anxiety often masquerades as attitude
Yeah.
a lot. I think my final one would be withdrawing during training. So staying quiet in groups because they're worried they'll sound silly or wrong, or it might come off as lack of motivation, but it's often just fear. So
Mhm.
any others? Or we're good? Ruby, you got one more?
I got one more, which is the statement, "Oh, no one told me that." And it's brilliant. I have a coworker that I've trained in a couple of jobs, and I learned in training him that that was the go-to for when I was imparting information. "Well, no one told me that." And it's like, I understand that you're learning, but like, I, wow, I didn't recognize how much that phrase triggered me. So, well, that was the learning. But it is when somebody is constantly leaning on, "Well, no one ever told me that. No one ever told me that." I think that is covering some anxiousness there, and then trying to deflect and defend.
Gab?
Yeah,
Any more?
yeah,
Okay.
my last one would be, I know there's some more, but the last one for this round would be projection. So if they're having a hard time, then everybody else is having a hard time. I actually had this with some of my leadership team last year. That typically I don't see this in leadership team. But they were, I felt they were really feeling it. But in their one situation, it was like, this is really, really hard. This is the worst summer ever. And I was like, well, I've been part of 30 of them, and it's not. I've had many worse summers, and actually last summer was quite a good summer. It's a hard summer, that's for sure. But there's a projection that everybody is experiencing what they're experiencing, and it's the worst thing ever. And so hard to keep perspective.
All right. Some pretty great answers. So we're going to hear from our wonderful. For Camp Code listeners, unlock Ultra Camp's operations checklist for new directors, a free download to help you prepare for a smooth season. Find it at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. Running camp comes with countless moving parts. Ultra Camp helps you stay on top of them. Organize activities and daily schedules, manage wait lists and cabin assignments, automate billing and payments, centralize all camper and staff info in one place. With UltraCamp, camp operations run smoother, so directors can lead with confidence. Book your free customized demo at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. We are back, our first podcast with Ruby in quite some time, and we are super stoked. So let's talk a bit about how traditional staff training can actually make anxiety worse. Let's call ourselves out as an industry. Some of our standard training practices are fueling anxiety without us realizing it. So here we go again, some rapid fire type answers. But what are we doing that is making this worse, Ruby?
Staff really don't like surprise scenarios, and that I learned the hard way. That when I dropped in a scenario, didn't tell them a scenario was coming, or there was a role play coming, or an emergency action that they were going to have. They'd learned about already, but then they were going to practice it. They did not like having that be spontaneous. So, as quality as that may be, as an exercise, it's outdated, and we have to stop having those things be surprises. There has to be some more heads up and leeway to it.
Great. Gab?
Yeah, I agree very much with the spontaneous, unless it's like a fun little treat. But besides that, don't. Just don't do it. It's not good for you. It's not good for them. I would say old school long-term sessions where we're lecturing the whole time. Where I would say before COVID or even before that, staff members just knew. They just sat there, kept their mouths shut, and they're like, meh, I don't really know the information. I don't care. That's fine. We all don't. Whereas I'm learning right now is if because of anxiety, and this is not, it's actually kind of positive, they're not learning it, they start to get stressed out. And then that's where the anxiety is, and they'll let you know, like, I don't understand the content you shared. Whereas before they were like, I understand, but I also don't care. There's a high care here. So it's not a bad thing, but certainly hour-long sessions or late sessions, back-to-back sessions, it causes stress and anxiety. So allowing for time to absorb information, to practice that information, to integrate the information, as well as to take breathers, essential.
Yeah, I mean, people can only absorb so much information passively.
Yeah.
And when we blast staff with, sit down and listen to all the rules and the policies and the what ifs, their brains just, as you said, they can't process it. I also think that we tend to teach what to do but not how to think. So then things go off, because when things go off script, as they always do, staff panic because they don't have a framework to problem solve. So we need to make sure that we're teaching them how to think and how to problem solve in any given situation. Ruby, you got another one? Nope. All right.
don't.
Gab, how about you? That is okay.
No, I'm
Gab, you got
good.
another one?
I'm
Okay.
good.
My last one, which I still saw last summer, was very surprised. Public correction.
Ooh.
Brutal. Even if you think you're being lighthearted, younger staff experience public mistakes as humiliation, and they are going to shut down and stop trying. So if you have to do corrections, they have to be privately done. All right, so let's talk solutions, and these don't have to be rapid fire. We want all the ideas here. But Ruby, what are some things that we can do with staff training to help our young staff with any issues of anxiety and stress?
So the main place that I'm interfacing with staff right now during training season is for lifeguard training. And if you want to talk about stress and anxiety, you have a group of people that are about to jump in very cold water in a new place. Maybe they just got off a plane because they flew internationally overnight and got picked up at 2 a.m. And then at 8 a.m., I'm like, all right, you got to hop in the water. And I'm some stranger you've never met. Well, let me tell you, it's an anxious place. So I actually just had the opportunity to see Michael Brandwein speak last week at the ACA Southeastern Conference. And he reminded me that we have to be really intentional with those first moments with our staff. And the first moments of my lifeguarding classes have historically looked like, all right, hey, I'm Ruby, sign in on this sheet. And now this is what we're doing. We're getting in the water, we're swimming, right? And I am rethinking what is that first few minutes going to look like for training this year. And some of it is sharing, like, this is the gravity of what you are undertaking. I think a lot of times folks get put in the preseason lifeguard class or ropes class or whatever and don't really think about, like, no, we're actually talking about a child at the bottom of the lake that you might be having to go get. And that's scary. But if you don't feel like you can handle that, then this may not be the place for you. How we're going to deliver that message, I don't know yet. But I also have a camp that does a really nice job of building up the lifeguards as this is this privilege to be even asked to do this, and it's a big job. And those staff, 9 times out of 10, come in and are more successful in the class because they've already had time to process and think about the gravity of what they're taking on. So that's something I'm thinking about. I don't have all the solutions. It'll evolve. I'll report back on a future podcast. But I do think letting staff know that stress and anxiety is part of this job, and we work in community together to process and find our way through it. And you're going to get to have so much practice at camp working through stress and anxiety, which is going to be a life skill.
Love that. Perfect. All right. Gab?
I'm gonna go a little bit of a different direction from the staff training
Please do.
component. I'm gonna go with hire emotional regulators to be part of your team and let them in on what their role is. So as an example, last year, we have a program called Crew, and our 17, 18-year-olds are in the kitchen for 2 weeks out of a 8-week period. And it's a way of them learning more about camp, having appreciation for the work that goes beyond this, behind the scenes, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, some of the people that are applying for in charge of Crew, I was talking about what are some of the main issues. And one of the applicants was talking about it's not that deep. Like doing dishes is not that deep, and that there's a lot of stress about how we're doing it. Is it fast enough? Oh, it's hot today. And this person was like, honestly, it's not that deep. You do the dishes, the faster you do them, the more time we have in the lake. It's like actually not that deep. And I think when I was talking to her, she was like, there's skills that we can do beforehand. There's things that we can do better in their training. And she pointed out a couple of things on how to get them better set up. But she said, like, a lot of the times people, when they're starting into a new role, you're starting with this mindset that, oh my gosh, I'm so petrified. Am I going to do a good job? And she was like, we need to tell them from the beginning what the job is. And I was just like, yes, I agree with everything you say. And I didn't realize, but unintentionally, I have been looking for staff this year that have that same energy, that it's not that deep. This is the reality. This is the X, Y, and Z of it. And if it's not going well, then you talk to a leadership team member and we problem solve it. That's it. That's the job. You're making it deep. And if you are, let's figure out why that is. So I think it's important to have returning staff members and help them understand what perspective is, help them understand that at camp, it is a hard job, but we also have to have perspective on what's at stake and get ourselves grounded. So I would intentionally outreach to returning staff members and make them part of the regulators crew.
Thank you. For me, I think the most important thing in the beginning is to normalize learning, and that it's a process or process, however you want to say it, but that it's not something that they're just going to get and that they have to do. We're learning and we need to practice and we need to hear about it and talk about it and so on. And you're not going to, after one session, be the pro at this particular thing. So I used to love saying to staff, you are not supposed to know everything yet. Your job this week is to get a little bit better every day. And then you keep reminding them, if you've 10 days of training or 7 days or 4 days, whatever you've got, is every day say, do you feel a little bit more prepared than yesterday? And I mean, just a little bit more, so that you can sort of build that foundation. And to say learning is what we do. We don't expect you to arrive here knowing how to do all parts of this job. And in fact, I don't expect you to leave at the end of this summer knowing how to do every aspect of your job supremely well. We are always still learning. And the other thing, we've touched on it already, but obviously a lot less lecture. Like, do not talk for more than 10 minutes straight. Like, just don't. 5 if you can get away with it before you're introducing an activity or another speaker or a video or something. And lots of opportunities for scenarios that they know are coming. No surprise scenarios, because they need to practice those conversations and not just hear us talking about them. Ruby, you got another one?
I do. I had a camp that brought me in to do ages and stages this year, which is a classic session that everybody probably does some version of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, how am I going to do this better, different, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm certain one of you probably gave me this idea, but I'm going to say it again. So we did the Ages and Stages Museum. And so our group was split up into the different kind of age block, the 5 to 7, 8 to 10, whatever. And this was randomly done. It wasn't based on who you were going to be working with this summer, because everybody at this camp could potentially interface with kids of all ages. And so they had a worksheet that had a group discussion. They did some individual reflection and then group discussion about themselves or what they know about kids who are in that age range. So they did that for a little while. And then I provided them with some other kind of like book information about, this is what the experts say about this, like what resonates for you, what fills in gaps, what, connects to what you've already said. And then after they had those discussions and kind of filled out the worksheet, they created an exhibit that could be involving a couple people. They had a poster if they wanted to, but they had to create an exhibit that the rest of the groups would rotate through. And they'd have a minute or two with each group to share, like, these are the highlights. If you were going to a museum and there was going to be a 6-year-old at camp, this is what you can expect to see. And this is how we manage some of those behaviors. And this is how we get them to do simple tasks. And it was so creative and fun. And what I liked about it is it highlighted what the staff already knew. Because as Beth said already, it's important for them to understand that they are going to be learning at camp, but they're not just going to learn from me, and they're not just going to learn from the staff manual. They can learn from each other and from themselves. They already have a vast knowledge base, even if it isn't something very niche. They have knowledge that they bring to the table. And so giving them an opportunity to be the experts to share amongst each other. I didn't really share any content. All I did was provided a format for them to share content and knowledge with each other. And again, their creativity was beyond anything I would have come up with for any of those age groups. And how awesome is that they can not only exhibit their knowledge, but also the creativeness of camp.
And there's so much more buy-in when you allow them to do that. All right, Gab, got another idea?
Yeah, and I was going to say, with what you're saying, Ruby, you can't do that every single session, but you can certainly find time to do it every day, like once a day. And one of my teammates is taking a camp professional course with the Quebec Camp Association. And one of her instructors, who's doing the financial portion of this course, so, the exciting piece, and he had everybody write down their questions, and then he weaved the questions throughout the course, that portion of the course. And she said it was the most engaged she was in because, oh, and when she was when he was weaving it through, he was asking people, what would you do with this? What would you do with this? And then he course corrected a little bit and he just adjusted, or he would say amazing. And she said she was the most engaged, and he clearly knew his information really, really well to be able to bring out the important pieces. But I think sometimes as camp professionals, we think, okay, it's all on me to do this. But if you really know the content, this is a wonderful way to build confidence with your staff. So I really love that idea, Ruby. I think for myself to help build that trust, help build that confidence with our staff members and with each other is setting up check-ins during staff training. We do want to see where our what's going on with our staff members. We do want to show them that we want to hear from them, if there's anything that's up that's we should know about. I classically like to use cue cards and ask them, what's going well with you during staff training, what's something you're confused about, what's something you may be overwhelmed about, and they write it, and then we assign leadership team members to meet with them. And it can be during a meal, it can be during a little period between sessions. We try not to make it more than 15 minutes, but we'd want to build that connection and that we see you, we hear you. But more times, 9 times out of 10, we're putting out mini fires that are about to happen before they get to a bigger cleanup. So creating that time within your schedule for leadership team members to meet with staff members one-on-one during staff training is, I find, still very daunting and hard. And when I do it, I honestly think it's stupid and I don't want to, but afterwards I think it's good. So if you're like, I don't have time, I'm here with you. I'm also complaining with you at that time, but it's good.
I have 2 really quick ones. One is to teach mental models. So give them a simple way to think. So, for example, and lots of camps have sort of other acronyms that they use, but you might use observe, interpret, act, and check. So it moves them from I don't know what to do to I have a process to follow. So let's start there. They still may need your help, and that's okay, but you've given them some framework. So try adding those in. And this relates back to a couple things that were said earlier, but predictable structure lowers anxiety. So post the agenda, explain the day, explain the why behind the sessions. Why are you doing these sessions? We did one year, this was many years ago, but where we thought it would be fun to have all the titles of the schedule creative. So you had no idea what the session was about. It just sounded really fun. And that was a learning issue for me because staff didn't know what was coming. And we weren't doing it to be mean or play a trick. We honestly thought, oh, isn't this fun? Look at us being campy and creative. But explain what's happening so they don't ever have to think, I don't know what comes next. Anybody got any more? Okay. My last one is to, and we talked about this earlier, but do corrections privately, praise publicly. And it matters more than we think. So give them plenty of chances to work through these real scenarios. A camper's crying at night, a new counselor's panicking, anxious staff member thinks I'm failing. I don't know what to say. I'm doing it wrong. So you've got that good observe, interpret, act, check, or whatever it is that you're doing. And that switch alone lowers anxiety, improves performance. I can't recommend doing scenarios enough, but don't do just scenarios all the time. And of course, with front loading, that with all this practice of scenarios, it will still take real life practice to feel like you're really good at it and that's okay. So there's just a couple little wrap ups from me there. But what are some steps? Here's our last question of the day that directors can take immediately to help with this ever growing situation. So what can you do during staff training that can help? Ruby, do you have any?
I think asking your return staff who you may be interviewing, saying like, hey, what made you anxious or nervous during staff training? Do you have any ideas for how we could improve that? You don't have to do the ideas that they offer, but how cool is it that you're asking a returner to provide some input? And you might find someone who's really passionate and excited about kind of like taking the lead on helping staff walk that journey and find their way through anxiousness as they are at camp and uncertainty. Man, the uncertainty coordinator, can I have that job? I think I'm
Yes.
sounds like a lot of fun. Anyway, so I think, yeah, that's something we can do right now is talk to your returners as you're interviewing them. You can even ask your new staff, what makes you nervous about this job, or what do you think might be challenging about this job?
Mhm.
And so you have an opportunity to dispel some myths, but also build in to your training a way to address some of those concerns.
Okay. And if you have one more idea, could you save it for later, please? Because
Yes.
I forgot to ask you that.
Perfect. Love it.
Gabs, do you have
I
any
would
ideas?
Yes, I do. I would also just add with Ruby's, what a wonderful connection piece for your second year staff members who are in that framework of first year, the year before, and then you specifically reaching out to them and saying, hey, we want to do better to onboard. We want to do better to make people feel welcome. What worked for you last year? What's something that stressed you out, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's so cool for those second years. I would say this is going to be a tough one, team, but do less as a director. If you're the director of your camp, I would plan to try to not have so much on your plate so you can be building those connections with your staff, or you can at least take a stand, be part of some of the sessions, sit during meals. I was always impressed that Beth and Ruby, no, Beth and Travis sat at all of their meals during staff training. I still haven't got myself there, but if you have a goal of, I also don't like to sit during meals. So, I mean, there's something there on my end too, but if you bit by bit are able to onboard leadership team members throughout the year and meet with them and get them to a comfortable level of leading certain sessions, let go some of those sessions so that you can be present and you can be part of pivoting or observing and adjusting, that is going to make a difference with the trust level and anxiety of your staff, you being present.
Excellent. I've come up with a few little tips, really quick ones for directors who are new to planning training to help avoid anxiety. So these ones are just really easy, quick steps that you can introduce this year. And then in 2027, you add more. In 2028, you add more, and so on as we get better and smarter about all of this. But make sure that if you are used to doing lecture style, that you make, at minimum 3 training sessions really interactive, or at least one a day really interactive. Add a questions we're so glad you asked board so that you can put questions up there and things can be answered later. And there isn't that concern of sticking your hand up and asking a question and feeling like you might be stupid, even though you're not. And I would create that supervisor coaching cadence. Gab was talking about doing those check-ins, but make sure your staff knows what that is. What's the little dance that you do that every day you're checking in, once a week you're checking in on Tuesdays, or, knowing when that will happen on a regular basis and that it will be a regular thing, that you're not just popping up every so often and asking how they're doing. Giving returning staff leadership roles, but with training, not assumptions. So not just saying, hey, Ruby, can you take on this piece this summer, but not sitting down with them and making sure you both have the same expectations. Build in reflection moments throughout the week. Make sure you're doing those. I did them daily, but make sure you're doing them on the regular. And my last one would be build small wins early. So give the staff tasks that they can succeed in on day 1 or 2, because confidence grows from that kind of repetition and from those wins. So day 1 and 2 is not the days to give them those really hard, experiential learning things where they get frustrated and angry with each other and all that. That can go later when you've built community, but make sure they have some small wins early. Any others you two would like to share?
I'm good.
All right. Okay. So we want you to remember that today's staff are not fragile. They're overloaded, understimulated in some ways, overstimulated in others, and often untrained or unexperienced in emotional regulation. Anxiety is not a flaw, it's a signal. And if we can design staff training with intention, we can turn anxious staff into confident leaders. All right, Gab, it's time.
Recap. That was, dare I say, harmonized. Okay, so why are staff members stressed out and anxious? Well, the world's not doing great. Hope, trust gone down. Perfectionism has gone up. And they missed a couple of years of just practice. Adolescence, which is apparently, according to doctors, an important thing to have in one's life is that practice. So we're dealing with that. Some mistakes that we're still making is surprises, and not the good kind, on staff members, public correction, and also just old school, long school sessions where they're not actually learning and growing. And that just causes a lot of stress. So what can we do? That's the important part. Team, we have so much we can do. So one, as we know at Camp Code, set expectations, be clear about what's going to be expected, not only day to day, but also within the sessions. Normalize that they are not supposed to know all the things. They're supposed to learn some of the things, but it's also really helpful to show them that they are learning. That helps with a little bit of confidence and feeling like, that they belong in this space. Plant some emotional regulators amongst those staff. So there is a herd mentality. And if you have some people that say, hey, it's not that deep, but let's talk about it, that's going to really, really help your team. As well as, as Beth is saying, correct privately, praise publicly. Staff want to feel like you have their back. And so all of our actions that we're doing should reflect that. Some of those other things is letting them be the experts while you guide them. And, make sure that as a camp director, you're doing less so you can connect with your staff members. You don't have to do this alone. We say this quite often. Your second years can be a great source of friendships, even your first year. Acknowledging that there might be some struggles and issues is always helpful to do. But we like at Camp Code to have a strong mission, bring everybody in and show them the map so they know what is expected of them. And that's all we have on Recap today.
Thanks, Gab. And we would love your input. So you can let us know any topics you would like us to discuss or guests you recommend we have on the show. We would love to hear from you because we're all about sharing in this industry. And if you found our podcast to be useful, we'd love it if you'd leave us a rating or a review in your podcasting app. So here's how you can find us if you'd like to reach us individually. Ruby?
You can email me, ruby@rubyoutdoors.com, or follow me on Instagram @rubyoutdoors.
Thank you, Gab.
I'm here. Okay. You can reach me at Waro. Oh, you can check out where I work at waro.com, and you can reach me at info@waro.com, ouareau.com.
Thanks. And we're at gocamp.pro, or you can reach me directly at Beth@gocamp.pro. And for our next podcast, we'll be talking about challenges faced by children today and what that means for staff training. This week's best practice is coming from Ruby.
For your best practice today, I want you to think about the question, who is the first face that your staff see when they interact with your camp? So that might be for an interview or pre-interview, whatever that might look like. And then who is the first face that they see when they get to camp? And if those two people are not the same face, then I think that needs to change. As someone who has started a handful of jobs over the years, it's always a little disconcerting when the person who you've been communicating with or interviewing with is nowhere to be seen, or when your direct supervisor is nowhere to be seen as you get started in a job. And I think a way we can lower some anxiety is just simply by being like, hey, this is what this person looks like. And maybe that's a video, right? Like if I'm the one who interviews, but Gabs is the one who's going to be at the welcome tent, I'm going to be like, hey, get so excited to see Gabs at the welcome tent. Can't wait for you to be here. Or maybe Gabs sends a quick little video that says, hey, I can't wait to see you. It is remarkable how much more comfortable you feel in a job when you have some understanding of who is that person that you're going to be greeted by and see. Even if that person is going to turn around and hand you off to somebody else, having that familiar face be there right away is really, really important. So who's the first face? Who's the first face they interact with in your process, in your hiring process? Who is the first face that they interact with when they get to camp?
See why we're so happy to have her back? All right. Camp Code is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network, and you can check out all our other camp podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcasts. A very special thank you to Ruby Compton for being here with us and sharing her advice, experience, and wisdom. We're so grateful to you. We have missed you so much. And to everyone else, thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions you want us to dive deeper into, any parts of this, reach out. We're here to help you create the best staff training possible. So until next time, we hope we can keep making camp a place where young people grow, not just campers, but staff too. Thanks for the listening, friends. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.